When we talk about dependent clauses or subordinate clauses, we can actually talk about three specific types. And so in this video, we'll just quickly review what these three different types are. Now, just to refresh our memory, a subordinate or dependent clause is a clause that has a subject and a verb, like every clause, but it also has some kind of word like a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun that makes it so that that clause cannot stand by itself. An example would be something like because, there we go, because she sneezed. And you can see there that we have a subject in she, and we have a verb in sneezed, and then we also have this word because. And the word because is really what makes this dependent. Because she sneezed, ... something has to follow, right? Some other action has to take place. We need to keep the sentence going. So you can see because is in our list here of subordinating conjunctions, and that makes this a dependent clause. Now, when we think about these examples here, subordinating conjunctions and relative pronouns, sometimes if we start a dependent clause with one of these relative pronouns, we can call that a relative clause. And there's a very simple way of remembering this. We're relating more information, so a relative clause. And here you can see the problem with terminology. This is not going to be one of our three ways to categorize clauses, but it is an alternative way to talk about some of these different types of dependent clauses. So just keep that in mind, that this term exists as well to categorize some of these clauses, but we're going to focus on some different kinds of descriptions here. All right, so let's have a look at three examples, and let's see how these different examples have a different function in each case. So we're really talking about the function of the dependent clause here. Our first example is of a clause that acts like an adjective. And we know that an adjective describes a noun, typically. So in this case, we have I took a maglev train, and that's our independent clause. That can stand by itself as a sentence. Then we have this relative pronoun which introduces more information here. And we have a verb, runs. So there's our verb, which is not only connecting this, but it's also functioning as the subject of this new clause, which runs on magnets. And all of this together here, which runs on magnets, it's describing the train. So the train is in our independent clause, and then this dependent clause is functioning like an adjective. What kind of train? The train that runs, or which runs, on magnets. Okay, so that's an adjectival dependent or subordinate clause. Let's have a look at the next example here. This one goes, while she took a nap, I did some studying. So you can see here that this first part is the dependent clause. Okay, it has a verb again, took. It has a subject, who or what took. Well, it's she. It has a subordinating conjunction over here, while, and that's what makes it dependent, because this is tying what follows to some other clause. And this last bit is not as essential. This is the direct object. Okay. After this comes our independent clause, which can obviously stand by itself. And this dependent clause here is functioning like an adverb. Now, an adverb can do lots of different things. It can modify a verb, an adjective, another adverb, a participle. It has lots of different functions, but often the main one is that it modifies a verb. And in our independent clause, the verb is did. I did some studying. So if we ask the question, well, when did I do this? If we ask the question when, then that question when is being answered by an adverb. And so this whole dependent clause here functions like an adverb to tell us more about did, which is the verb in the independent clause. Okay, so we have one more example here, and this is in some ways the hardest, but it is actually quite a neat phenomenon here. So in this case, we have I will have what you are having. Okay, so we're just going to split this into two sections to start off. And if we look at this, this says I will have, and will have is the verb here, and I is the subject. But this clause here basically includes the other clause, what you are having. And that's actually quite tricky to see here. So let's think of a different example. If you say I will have, and we just put a noun here. Okay, so let's stick a noun in here. Let's say I will have some lasagna. And lasagna is a noun. And we just have added a little bit more description here. So lasagna would be the noun, and you can see that it would function as a direct object. It receives the action of will have, right? Will have what? Some lasagna. So you can see now that this dependent clause here, which starts with a relative pronoun, which has a subject and a verb, all of this, what you are having, it's functioning like a noun, right? It's functioning like a direct object. I will have what? What you are having. That's very strange. So those are the three different types of dependent or subordinate clauses. They have three different kinds of functions. They can function like an adjective, an adverb, or a noun. And it's not crucial that you can always tell what the different functions are, but sometimes I think it really helps to know this because it just gives you a little bit of clarity about how the sentence is working, and it's also pretty cool in practice.